Five Nights at Freddy's is a lore-based game. It's just full story. There's a little bit of gameplay in the Fnaf story, but it's mostly story, or at least the fan base likes the game more for its story. And I mean, it's a great story. It's not really bad. It actually just lacks a bit of stability, that Scott confirms some stuff that we never get to know, but it's a great story overall. But if there's one thing that Five Nights at Freddy's does completely wrong, it's the protagonist from the first games. That being Michael Afton, a character that's beloved by the fanbase. But in reality, he just exists. We just know that he is the protagonist. And that's it. And honestly, this could be a little bit controversial because the fanbase loves Michael Afton. They believe that he's the sort of like the best character in Five Nights at Freddy's. But he's a terrible character in general. And an even worse protagonist. Like, literally, you cannot tell me that a character that literally does not exist fully in the game, he doesn't even have a good presence in the game, is the protagonist. You cannot tell me that's a good protagonist, a good character, please. So I woke up feeling a little bit silly, and I just hope that I don't get in any controversy for criticizing Michael Afton. So now let's get into the things why Michael Afton is a terrible, awful protagonist. Hello internet and welcome to Game Theory. That's quite interesting. I love the intro from Game Theory. It's so fun, it's so interesting. So now let's just dive into the topic. Today I'm gonna be explaining why Michael Afton is a terrible protagonist. Michael Afton does not have a story at all. Like, he doesn't have a story, anything. And the little story that he has is just theories and speculations from the fans. Like, seriously, there's just that one event in Michael Afton's life that the whole fan base has agreed on to be canon. So what's the only information that we have about Michael Afton? Well, the only information that we have about him is that he is the brother responsible for his brother's death in the bite of 83, and we know that he's William Afton's son. Like, seriously, I cannot put into words how annoying that actually is. Like, having a protagonist that doesn't have a backstory, where most of the Fnaf story takes place in the past. And for someone so important, he must do something interesting in the past to be this important in the present. We never get explained fully any motivations for why Michael Afton gets into every single Freddy Fazbear's Pizza that he can see. Hell, we don't even know if he's the protagonist of every single game. It's just a theory, a game theory. And it's just something that I think that I already mentioned is this: he's just, for being so important, he just lacks everything. Michael Afton lacks everything for being the most, maybe not the most important character, but one of the most important characters in the Fnaf franchise. And I actually believe that it's not like a media type of situation. And that could be justified, for example, for it being in a game. But if you take a look at the current protagonist from the Fnaf franchise, that being Cassie and Gregory, they have more presence in their games than whatever Michael Afton had in all of the past games. Like, you cannot tell me that two children have literally more importance, more personality, more backstory than Michael Afton. If there's another thing that I highly dislike about Michael Afton, is that he has little to no personality. Oh yeah, he has a little bit, but in the survival logbook. And I think that the little bits of personality that it's shown in the survival logbook of Michael Afton is not enough to fully create and support a protagonist like that. He's supposed to be the protagonist from the first game to Pizzeria Simulator, that being the 6th game. You cannot seriously tell me that the protagonist for 6 games does not have a real personality. But the thing is that having such an importance in the game, why do we know nothing about him? We don't really know him. We don't really know who he is. And one of the most important things for a media, for sort of like a media character to go on, to carry on with the fandom, to carry on with an audience, is to be someone. Which again is something that Michael Afton lacks a lot. He is not someone in the game. He's only meant to carry and justify the games. If he would have been left only to exist in Sister Location and all games after Sister Location, that would have been perfect. It would have worked so well. He was never intended to be the protagonist in the first games. He was made like sort of in the way. Like, if he would have been only the protagonist in Sister Location or Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, it would have worked perfectly. And making him the protagonist of all of the other games is something that honestly damages a lot the character. He could have been explained more in Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator. And yes, I know that the gameplay doesn't allow characters to be fully explained, but hell, we know a lot of other characters that are not even that important for the story, but we know more about them. And his lack of presence is just something that damages him a lot. And that actually follows up something that I also wanted to talk about him, is that he just exists in the games. He was just made with the purpose of carrying the game, of sort of like justifying why there's always somebody who keeps going back to these places that they could get killed so easily without the fanbase having any doubts about it. Like, yeah, we get it, he may have come back a lot of times because he wanted, I don't know, to save his family. And yet, that's also something that it's not explained. As I already mentioned, he does not have any motivations. Yes, we get to hear at the end of Sister Location that he's going to come find his father. But yeah, are we sure that's the motivation that's gonna get him going 6 times? Hold on, no. 4 times back into Freddy Fazbear's Pizza? I'm sorry, but there's just like nothing that actually motivates Michael Afton to keep going back. And there's no character that's more idealized by the fandom than Michael Afton. And I think that I already mentioned this before, but it's just theories. Michael Afton was created out of theories. That's why we get to see some crazy theories about Michael Afton. For most of the Fnaf media, the character is just invented or is just brought back from, I don't know, another media made by another fan. And that also gets me to the conclusion that Michael Afton was sort of like ruined by the fandom. The fact that he doesn't even have presence, but the community wants him to have so much presence, it's something that's sort of like overwhelming. What if in reality he's not the protagonist of any of the games, he's just the protagonist of Sister Location? If you want honesty, that would make so much more sense than a character that keeps coming back all the time. He's just coming back to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza because God knows what. And the other thing is that Michael Afton is brought up when he's not needed. Yes, there's a high chance that he's the protagonist in the first 6 games. Well, maybe. I think that there's another theory that's been running around that in FNAF 3, he's not the protagonist. So that actually leaves him being the protagonist or of at least 4 games, 5 to 4 games. And there's another theory that concludes that Michael Afton is not the protagonist of FNAF 6, leaving him with 4 to 3 games. We already don't know if he's really the protagonist of FNAF 4, if it's the crying child. That actually takes a lot of other games from him being the protagonist. And what if FNAF 2 Custom Night was not real? What if it wasn't canon? But what if he wasn't the protagonist in all of these games? It wouldn't change much. And I think that alone just shows how much presence Michael Afton lacks in these games for being the protagonist. And I honestly believe that Michael Afton shouldn't be given the title of being the protagonist of the Five Nights at Freddy's story. And that leaves me with the conclusion, sort of like the idea. If Michael Afton was planned from the beginning, he would have worked so much better, he would have worked perfectly. But Michael Afton was planned a little bit too late for the FNAF story. The first phase of Five Nights at Freddy's has a terrible protagonist. That's supposed to be Michael Afton. But actually seeing what it's been sort of like improving a lot for the next phase, for the new games, we get to see a lot of like improvement of those characters. We get to fully see characters with a real personality, with a real backstory. And yes, Scott may have fucked up a lot with Michael Afton as a protagonist, but we can see that he's improving a lot the way of writing the story in its newest releases. We did not talk about the Mimic incident. But anyways, I think that's it for today. Yeah, I think that I talked shit a lot in this video. But it's all for the, I don't know, greater good, I guess. Honestly, I could turn this sort of like videos into a series of me just talking shit about anything that I can think of. But anyways, I hope you're having a great day, great night, great afternoon, whenever you're seeing this. And I hope that you have a great rest of the day, rest of the night, rest of the afternoon, as I already mentioned whenever you're seeing this. But I hope you have a great time. See you all in the next time. Thank you for staying up until this time of the video. I love you if you stayed here. And thank you so much for watching this.